Okay, so at this point, we've really spent a lot of time working on the styles for our web page, which we should. And there's still a lot that we could do. So CSS really should be the wheelhouse of the designer. Developers don't usually spend as much time, getting the finer details of this down. So this is something that you should really engage with and hold yourself to a pretty high standard for. But what we want to do now is just some basic housekeeping. So when you see some of these things that look out of order, you just want to go back and fix them. So the best way to do that is to use the developer tools. And when you see something that's not quite right, make sure you go back and fix it. So the last bit I want to challenge you to do is to use the developer tools to identify the things that are in need of adjustment and then make those adjustments. So you're going to see a lot of those. Obviously, we get two different, pretty decent different typographic representations from the template page to the style guide page. And we can see here that we have, we don't have as many instances with headings following headings. We have some right here though. So I want you to use the developer tools and come back and figure out what's causing the problem and how you want to go about fixing it. In this case, it's the top margin for all of these headings, right? That for me is bothering me. There's a lot of space there that I would want to fix. But I'm not sure I'd want to fix it until I was certain I was happy with the typefaces. And I'm not happy with those either. So I probably want to go back and make sure I address my typeface issues first and then address the proportions and, all of the relationships of them as far as proximity goes and how close one thing is to another, for example. So make sure you go back and take care of those things. If you're not happy with the look of these pages, make sure you fix them. Make sure you get help if you need help. But the last thing I want you to do is once you get this onto your hosting space, we're going to finally make use of this CSS button here. So I'm going to deactivate this and I'm going to click my CSS link. It should be programmed to open in a new page anyway. And now I can't check it because I'm local, but it gets me pretty close, right? So I can go to the CSS validator link here, and I can at least get to the validator, and I can validate by direct input. So in this case, what I might want to do is just grab my style sheet from now Sublime Text, because I've changed it a lot. But if I come back here and grab it, I might get a couple of errors because I don't think it can handle, it's not really ready for variables yet, but I'm going to check my style sheet and make sure I'm getting a green light for what I'm seeing, and this is saying that the styles are okay. If you see errors, you want to work through them because that's probably breaking the rest of your style sheet. So you want to make sure that you go through and work through any of the errors. This is just as cryptic as the HTML validator, but it's also every bit as helpful. So just make sure you go back and you use that to solve your errors and get your website looking like a good representation of where you would want, the first draft of your brand to be. For me, like I said, I'd have a lot more work to do with this, but this is at least, around where I would expect a beginning website to be. So as long as you hit at least to this benchmark, you'll be in good shape. And if it's better, that would really be ideal as well. But let me know if you have any questions. Make sure you use the help forum if you need it. And work with one another, help solve each other's problems as well, because you do get extra credit for that. But hopefully everything's going well with this. I want you to spend a little bit of time with CSS. Something I didn't go over with you, by the way, that I think is really a great idea for you to look at is, I think it's CSS Gallery or CSSArt.com. Yeah, css-art.com. If you really want to see what can be done with CSS, I want you to visit this, and I want you to spend a little bit of time looking through some of the things that are here. So all of these things have been built using pure HTML and CSS. And for most of them, you can actually look at the source code so that you can see what went into it. Now, there's a lot that goes into it. So, doing, art with CSS, there's definitely a learning curve. But again, the price for entry is a lot lower, right? Art supplies cost a lot of money. And this can be done really just with the hosting space that you have. There are a lot of different things that you could do. And with these explorers, again, the code is open, so you could try to change things. just to start understanding what you're looking at. You could come in and try to change some of the colors or try to add a different texture. See if you can change the shape of some of these things. It would be a really good challenge for you and a great way to spend your time. But what I really want you doing with this, I'm not going to assign anything like that, but I want you to take a look at some of these things and just start to get some inspiration for where you might be able to take this, because there's so much that can be done here. There's even games. So you get a nice little pixel-based game here. Let's see. I haven't seen this one before. It's giving us a narrative. All right, and now I don't know, that seems like a good idea. All right. We follow through. This is kind of neat, I mean, it's small. It could be further developed, but that's kind of cool. So anyway, I want you to take a look at some of these things and just start to get a sense for where you could actually go with CSS. Once you get really good at it, it does become an art form. And there's nothing that we can do in print, in InDesign or Illustrator with type on a path or type on a curve that we can't do now with CSS on the web as well. So I want you to keep that in mind, and hopefully you can use this as inspiration to push yourself a little bit further and push yourself to understand what you're looking at, and make sure that you fully engage with CSS, because as a designer, this really is the area of web design where you can do your best work as long as you're willing to do it. So just make sure you look through some of these, try to get a little bit of inspiration and get an idea of where you could go with this. And otherwise, just work on this website until it at least meets a standard of a first draft for you, and something that you would actually be willing to present in a critique.